You write, for all its talk of destiny, Star Wars insists on freedom of choice. That's its largest lesson. Can you describe what you mean by that? And can you tell us why you believe in the existence of free will?
Okay, so there's a link between what we've been discussing, that is the political commitment to republics, and the individual tale of Star Wars. And I think that's what makes the somewhat cartoonish movies actually have a deep theme. The idea of authoritarian rule by someone who's a tyrant forcing people to do stuff is despised in Star Wars. And the idea that every individual, kind of every day, has the freedom to go one direction rather than another, that's kind of at the heart of Star Wars. So it comes up in small ways in scenes that don't seem to be political, like when Obi-Wan says,
"You must do what you feel is right, of course."
When Luke says he's not going to join the rebellion. And when, in a bigger moment, the Emperor Palpatine to-be says to Anakin, "You must make a choice."
You must choose!
When he himself, that is Palpatine, is subject to getting killed, and Anakin actually saves him. He makes a choice. So Han Solo makes a choice to come back and save Luke after Leia says,
he's got to follow his own path. No one can choose it for him.
So that's all over Star Wars, and it's in deep tension with the nominal theme of the movies, which is about destiny and prophecy. So they seem to be all about, it's been prophesied this and that, and the Emperor's always saying,
"Everything is proceeding as I have foreseen."
Yoda really has the last word. He says,
"Difficult to see. Always emotion is the future."
And that's connected with the freedom of choice theme. So I think the movie takes a stand in favor of freedom of choice. I don't have anything particularly deep to say about freedom of choice myself. I'd say two things. One is that there's a philosophical account of freedom of choice, which says that we have ideals as well as impulses, and we can live in accordance with our ideals. We can do that, and sometimes we do. And if we do, we're exercising our freedom rightly understood. I think that's a very appealing conception of freedom of choice, and it is in Star Wars. People who are exercising their freedom, they act in accordance with their ideals. The other thing I'd say to the philosophical skeptics about free will, who have some things to say about genes and about the environment, that human lived experience it's impossible to make sense of it, really, for just about anyone without having a kind of minute-by-minute commitment to freedom of choice and free will. So there are pretty complicated arguments on this count, but I will stick with lived experience.
So we can think of freedom properly understood as the ability or the choice to do what you ought, rather than the license to do what you want.
I think that's fair, not as a matter of what government should be doing. Mm-hmm. So if the government says we're going to make you do what you or we think it's best to do rather than your impulses, that would be kind of too Kantian a government. Mm-hmm. It would be intruding on people's desire, let's say, for chocolate or for a silly magazine this afternoon, rather than self-improvement. So to allow people in the private domain to make their own sortings of these things is that's a very important part of freedom. Mm-hmm. But at the individual level, if you are a slave to your impulses and going in directions, it might be drugs, it might be sloth, it might be any number of the things that are sometimes called sins, which can be, fun for the moment. Then to say you're enslaved by your passions, that's fair. That's a lack of freedom. And one way that people express their freedom, and this is a Star Wars theme, is they say, my self-understanding is that I'm going to be a good citizen, a good person, I'm going to be responsible. And when people follow those root paths, which are their own, fit with their own deepest commitments, they're exercising their freedom.